2 raging book nerds, 14 years of friendship, and 1 burning question.
If Katniss Everdeen posted on Reddit, would she be the arsehole?
Welcome to Once Upon a Red Flag. This season, we're stepping into Panem, where every tribute, tyrant, and mentor gets their day in the Am I the Asshole courtroom.
I'm Katie.
And I'm Rachel.
And join us while we read between the red flags and break down the Hunger Games, one questionable decision at a time. Welcome back to Once Upon a Red Flag. It's great to have you back for episode 2.
Honestly, I'm happy that you're here. If you followed the chaos of episode 1 and you've come back for more, welcome. You are with your own people now.
So what are we going to be talking about this week, Rachel?
So this week we do have Pretty and Polite, who is giving us the following question. Am I the asshole for going along with an unjust system because it gives me comfort, stability and status? Which sounds like it's going to be a doozy, 100%. But first, I have a question for you, because we kind of touched on this in the last episode. You mentioned that one of your favourite book series of all time is The Hunger Games.
Yeah, 100%.
So if you could not pick The Hunger Games at all, what book or book series would you recommend to someone who wants to get into reading, who says they don't like reading?
Well, okay, I think I'm going to recommend a book series. There's currently 2 of that are out. There are more coming. They basically got me back into reading after obviously like a really long slump of like not being able to read. And I think because I like fantasy. Just I like to read a lot, but the main thing I read is fantasy. At least in my 20s, I think that's kind of a rite of passage, right? You get into like fantasy.
The world itself is hard enough that you must escape.
Exactly. Yeah.
Somewhere else.
And I picked this up because it was like a comedic fantasy with like a love interest and a romance, but not in like a traditional sense. So what I'm going to recommend is, let me just get the books. Is The Assistant to the Villain, and then The Apprentice.
I haven't read these yet either.
I know some
people will probably come to me for.
By Hannah Nicole Mayer. Okay, I'm dyslexic, right? Okay, so if anybody can confirm how I pronounce this, and even if she's listening, if you could please confirm how you pronounce this, because I do not want to butcher it.
She's listening, hallelujah.
But there's
we've done well.
Yeah, I struggle, okay? This is why I mainly listen to audiobooks, because reading's hard, but I love stories. This is where we are.
You've read a lot of Sarah J. Maas, right? So can you imagine like having to read them books for the first time? Because I was pronouncing it Rysand for the longest time in my head, because it felt right. But then I was like, but you're showing it to Reese, but then my head wants to say Rysand, and I'm like, I know it's wrong. But it's wrong.
Is
I can't
Reese
undo it.
even right? Is Reese even right?
I think Reese is right. I think Reese. I say Reese. Is it right?
Half the time when I read fantasy books or read Sarah J. Maas books, I get to words like that and my brain just goes,
oh yeah, that's me.
It goes over the words.
That's me with Fourth Wing and the dragon's names.
Wing.
I'm like, thank you that you shortened it, please God. Yes. I can say 10. I can say Andara.
Yeah.
I did attempt to pronounce the full names multiple times and failed every single time.
Don't get me onto Fourth Wing. I will talk about Xaden. I will talk about Violet. I will talk about Rhiannon for a really, really long time. And this is not this book.
This might be season 2. This might be season 3. I'm still voting Twilight for season 2, personally. But you know.
Okay, so Rachel, I'm going to ask you the exact same question. If you had to recommend a book to someone who maybe wasn't a big reader, like what would you suggest?
I've gone for a more obscure book than you. I have thought of this in advance because I read a lot.
We can tell.
Really, did the massive bookcases behind me give it away? This is the start of my library. I will own a library at some point. I think I need to have 1,000 books for that. But I read this last year. This may have been last Halloween, and I've gone for Southern Book Club's Southern Book Club's Guide to Vampire Slaying by Greta Hendricks, because this is the best of the best. Because I ended up picking out so many bits within it. So they have a book club, and a guy moves onto their street, and he seems like he's the best, like handiest. He's helpful. He's investing in like the stock market with the husbands. It seems like he's stand-up guy, but the
Seems is the word.
seams, but the undercurrents of misogyny and how men can get away with things if
Mm.
they seem all right to the fellas. The women are clued in, but they can get away
Yeah.
without. Um, and it's a vampire novel. It literally takes the horror genre and makes it political. And I have now read multiple things by this author.
Oh,
I've also read, where is it? Uh, Final Girls
that
support
I
group.
also I have not read.
Um, the final girls, they've all been victims of serial killers, and they were the final survivors.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it takes the trope of how um, we monetize people's stories. So
Mm,
these women are all have multiple documentaries, and there's one girl in it who actually markets her trauma to make money.
mm.
And then they come after the final girls. So like this is like a classic slasher, vampire, and then up here there's a ghost poltergeist one, and I need to read Horror
Nice,
Store yet, which
nice.
is I think it's the like idea of a haunted hardware store, like a haunted homeware store rather than a haunted house.
I
Um
love how organized your bookshelf is. You'll see behind me, I have the start of my mini library here at my place. And I'm going to be completely honest with you, Rachel, there is no organization. Like,
look,
it's not in alphabetical order, it's not in genre, it's not in color, it's wherever there was a gap. And I feel like some people are really going to come for me right now.
okay, so I will level with everyone who is currently watching because these shelves here, this one, that one, that one, are all kind of organized.
Mm.
Sort of. This book entire bookcase was pristine, perfect organization, and then I bought more books, a lot more books,
Mm-hmm.
and
As
could
you
not
do.
work them into the system. And then I've just ruined the system because this is now my filming setup. And you can see the nice, pretty shelves, and the
Mm-hmm.
shelves above your eye line are less pretty.
It just goes to shit
Just,
once you go above.
just
Just a mess.
after about here, you should genuinely see what's going on up there. Actually, you shouldn't. I've done this purposely so that you can't. But I will out myself because the internet is full, completely full of unrealistic book expectations right now.
Very true, very true.
And I'm not going to go into that. Uh, I bought a Kobo so that I would not um, consume as many physical books, so that
Mm.
I have more space in my very, very tiny flat. That didn't work. I just buy more books. I just go wherever they're
Yeah.
cheaper. If it's on
Yeah,
Kobo, I'll buy it there.
I'm very, very busy person. I have a very stressful, very busy job, takes up a lot of my time. I don't really have time. I want to read. I don't like if I want to read, I really have to take holiday. Like I have to take annual leave. Like if I
Yeah,
take annual leave, that's when I read.
to
So
read a
most
physical book.
yeah, so most of the time I am listening to audiobooks. This is not sponsored, but I use something called Everand, which is a really, really good app. And I basically get all my books on that at the minute because I just have to listen to it as I do things, as I
Yeah,
drive, as I clean, as I do everything. So yeah, I'm hoping I will get some annual leave soon and maybe I can read a physical
just
book.
read a physical book. The
Yeah.
thing that I found is that if I can get time in an evening to read, I'll get
Uh,
further through a physical book. Apparently, it's something like the audio book is like 1.5 times longer time-wise because
but you
of
see,
slowing down.
I listen to it on like double speed. So
See, I
is
can't do that.
it?
No. No. I mean, I can take it in, don't get me wrong, but the
Uh-huh.
concept of listening on double speed just sets my heart rate racing, and I'm not
Uh,
relaxed then reading the book. And at that point, there's not really much point, is there?
yeah,
For me, at least.
I'm never really relaxed. So this is like
Does
that's
that
just a
really matter?
baseline. Just yeah. Anyway, we're gonna go off on a tangent. Shall we get
We'll go off
into the
tangent.
post
Yes.
of
Because
this
this girl
episode?
sounds like she's got problems. Let's help
Okay.
her with them, shall we?
Okay. I'm gonna read the title again, just because
Read the
it's been a
title
hot minute
again.
since we said
It
it.
has been a hot minute,
Okay.
yes.
Am I the arsehole for going along with an unjust system because it gives me comfort, stability, and status? Okay, heavy.
Probably.
So I work in public relations for a nationally recognised reality TV show. It's my job to make the contestants I've been assigned look good. I accompany them from their hometown, right across the country to the capital city, all the while keeping them presentable, punctual, and polite. This sometimes requires teaching them how to use cutlery properly, how to smile for the camera, and what to say to make the audience like them. It requires a wide range of skills, and I love my job. It's a huge honor, and I've known by the entire country. Sorry, I'm just going to remind everyone I am dyslexic, so there could be mistakes in this. I usually only work with these contestants for a couple of weeks. By the time they've gone into the show, there is a high chance I will never see them again, and neither will their families. I know it sounds brutal, but this is the way it's been for 74 years. Everyone in the country knows the score, and it has become a very important tradition, reminding us about sacrifice and peace, and why we must avoid war at all costs. It's just the way it is. Okay. My newest contestants aren't like the others I'm used to dealing with. They have a lot more fight in them than usual, and while they aren't always taking on board my direction and expertise, they seem to be doing well for themselves by fighting their corner rather than rolling over and playing the role in the show that they are meant to. It seems to be working well for them. It's not that I've not seen how brutal the system is. 23 children die each year, Christ, and it is televised for the whole country to watch their horrible ends. It's just getting worse and worse. But I've always seen it as justified. We have the Hunger Games for a reason. So far, that reasoning seems to be pretty sound. It reminds us why a revolution of the current system is bad, and since the games have started, there have been no revolutions. 23 lives seems like a small sacrifice in comparison to the tens of thousands who would die otherwise. Still, seeing such fire within a teenager about how unjust and horrible this situation is making me question myself a little. Am I wrong for supporting a system that was around before I was born, will be around long after I die, profiting from it via money, status, and comfort, when the people it directly affects hate it so much? Okay. That's
a lot of thoughts on this, because it sounds like you're not questioning this enough.
I feel like that's very surface level.
And I feel like you're hiding some info from us here, love. So let's start breaking this down, shall we?
Okay, let's start breaking this down. This is okay. Let's lock in. Okay.
Let's just go back to the beginning for a second. She called it a nationally recognized reality TV show. That is a PR spin in and of itself, because you kind of skipped over the bit there, about it being the survival show. I'm not talking about like Lost or like what do they call it? Hunted. Like Hunted in the UK, where they're like, yeah, go out and like we're gonna come and find you.
I love that show.
Never actually seen it. I kind of really want to. I feel like
it's a good show. You should watch it. It's a good show.
I don't watch much reality TV anymore, which is a shame, because I used to like love like I'm a Celeb. But spinning like, let's just round up 24 kids and brutally murder them live on TV, into that nationally recognized reality TV show. That's
a bit of a red flag
at work right there.
I think when that first came up, I was kind of like, oh, sick. So what does Effie actually do for this? Like, is she a presenter? And like, not really, but she's a responsible adult, right, for the District 12 kids.
Yeah, and then she does present like the reaping.
Yeah, that's true. She presents the reaping.
She presents the reaping.
She's very happy about. And then I guess she's a PR representative for District 12, right? She's for the kids who are going to die, who's sending off to pick up.
So like that's kind of like the Capitol's only reference to what District 12 is like. It's the kids who get reaped, right? And they only ever see reaping day. I don't think the Capitol like ever has like cameras inside District 12. Anyone wants to know what life is actually like.
Well, no, they don't. They don't want to share. They don't want to share information like that, do they? It's always It's always marketed.
All they see is that town square, which is meant to be the nicest part of it, and all these kids in their like Sunday best, which is, I guess, like the best possible description and the best possible image you could have of District 12 or any of the districts as the capital. It's always like the nicest part of town. But I guess she's written it from like her perspective of like being like PR, and she's not the only cog in this machine, right? How many other jobs are in there?
It does make you wonder how many other jobs are made by the games, right? By a television show, because this is an industry. It makes people money and encourages those with money to bet on it. Thanks, Snow. Great development from you. And it does make you think, who is the person that ultimately profits from this? There's a lot of money coming into this, because really Effie is, especially being District 12, the tiny cog in a very big, well-oiled machine.
Yeah, so like if you think of like, if you've ever watched And if you don't, guys, I actually recommend you do, 'cause actually you find some phenomenal Easter eggs in this. But if you've ever sat in the cinema and watched the big long list of credits of every single person who has been involved in that, what, 2-hour film, you see hundreds, if not thousands of names, because you've got assistants to directors and then assistants to makeup artists, and you break it all
Producers.
down. Producers, um, you break it all down and you have so many names that get a credit. So every single one of those people has like a Hunger Games um equivalent, really. But then you've
Mhm.
also got to think about the people who actually like build the arenas, because we're doing like single use arenas here. So there's
Yeah,
a new arena
wild.
built
These things are
every single year.
huge. Yeah.
You get a new one every single year. And then how many people for the size of that, like a film set itself would be statistically smaller because you save money by using like real life. It's a lot cheaper to hire like an actual like arena if you've got an arena scene than it would be to build one. And these guys build them from scratch so they can control every part of it. So
Every
all these
year as well.
hatches every single year.
Uh-huh.
So these guys like are building a living off of manufacturing. And then you've got the people like Effie who are marketing um the actual tributes themselves. And then you've got the betters, and there'll be statistical bookies with that. There'll probably be a
Mhm.
call center for everyone to call into. They're all making
Yeah.
money
Yeah.
because otherwise, how else do you handle the mass betting that goes on? There's not just like one room in the capital everyone walks into. It'd be absolutely manic. So, do these guys carry any less guilt? So if Effie's questioning, like, am I in the wrong here from being a part of this machine? Well, are you in the wrong for building the hatch that lets the mutts out?
I mean,
Like, where
there's a
does
lot
that
of other
start?
small cogs, isn't there? Yeah.
And then everyone is a part of this brutal killing machine. It isn't just the people who make money directly off it, like the big bucks. It's the people who put food on the table with that. Then do they even have any other choice?
I
Like,
guess.
what else goes on in the capital? Like, what other
Mhm.
industries are there in the first place?
I guess you got to also think, I think it's something actually that you brought up was how once these arenas are built, they don't necessarily get destroyed. They get used as
I
like a
don't.
tourism.
Yeah. So I think there's like a direct quote that I
Mhm.
pulled out from the book here, because this is Katniss as she's about to go into the arena, as she is literally about to enter one, and she literally says, everything is brand new. I will be the first and only tribute to use this launchroom. The
Crazy.
arenas are historic sites preserved after the games, popular destinations for the capital residents to visit, to vacation, go for a month, rewatch the games, tour the catacombs, visit the sites where the deaths took place. You can even take part in reenactments. They say the food is excellent.
It makes me feel sick.
It's
That quote every time makes me feel unwell.
It's dark tourism
Mhm.
on steroids at this
Mhm.
point, and
Yeah.
you're not, and it's the majority of people aren't gonna be there to remember the people who would go there to remember loved ones, they can't afford that. They wouldn't be let out of the
No,
district to do that. So
it's not, yeah.
you're just there to relive the brutal death of that girl you betted on.
Yeah, it's not like no, these people obviously aren't related. They can't flip in. They can't leave the district. So, but like it's not even just about that. This is a whole business. It's a whole
Yeah.
conglomerate. I'm not saying it's the same, but obviously, you know, people go to like Northern Ireland, see like the Game of Thrones stuff, see the filming sites, studios, all this kind of thing. And it's not that dissimilar. It obviously is very different, but it's
Very
not like
different.
it's not like
Less
people didn't
garbage
actually
traumatic.
die in Game of Thrones. Like that wasn't real life. But it makes me absolutely sick though how like Katniss remarks that they say the food on these trips is meant to be the best you can eat and eat. I don't. First of all, I don't know how people can stomach like enough to eat in such a brutal place where horrible death has happened, and it really does show how desensitized they are to it all.
Yeah. Like, I think everyone's desensitized to the whole thing though, because it isn't just them taking bets in the capital. There are people in the crowd at, like, they are frowned upon, don't
Yeah.
get me wrong, like they are
Hmm.
kind of like shunned. But there are people in the crowd at reapings who are taking bets on what kid's going to be reaped. Are they gonna cry?
their
Are they
own
gonna
district.
scream? Are they gonna run away? And these are kids that, like, they'll have seen grow up, and, like, I think they do turn around and say, like, that you have to kind of, like, politely refuse because these people are also informers and everyone's got something to hide. So you can't, like, really shit on them and piss them off and be like, "You're a horrible person, why are you doing this?"
Yeah.
Because that could then turn them on you. But then at the same time, like,
What are you doing?
you gotta find a way to make some money. Like, and there
Yeah.
are always gonna be people who choose the horrible, brutal route, but isn't it not every man for themselves? Because you've literally rounded these kids up like slaves. Like, these kids are enclosed in districts. I assume District 12 is not the only one that has a fence around it to protect them. I'm assuming that's every district, otherwise why wouldn't you run away unless you were from the Korea districts where, like, you want to be involved in the games? Everyone would
Yeah.
just run away. Everyone would just leave if they could. So you've fenced them in, you have turned them into slaves. They don't profit from their lives. Theoretically, like, the district is showered with gifts of money and food and whatever, and you have a
If they
prosperous
win.
district here if you win.
If
But
you
the
win.
chances are it's a gamble. It's a gamble for your life, and you're not even the person to make that decision. And then
I
if you go
think
into, like, the profit that's coming from them, you pay you do charm the districts to get sponsor gifts. The sponsor gifts go up in price the longer that you last.
so sick.
So you're not telling me that in the space of 3 weeks, the cost of bread has gone up threefold, has it? No. The capital's making the money off that. The thing that they're making money in every single way possible, having spared the expense of an arena and all these jobs. How much money are they making
Of these
to do
children
that?
dying. I mean,
Like,
I do find it, it's so uncomfortable, like, these people in the capital who get essentially emotionally attached to these children in the game, wanna see them live, whether that's because they've betted money or because they actually have an emotional attachment to them. And it's like, oh, well, the closer they get to actually surviving. Hope, again, as we spoke about in episode 1, giving even the capital citizens hope that the person they've kind of put
will
their
survive.
faith in are gonna win, and then making everything to help them survive more expensive. Of course, these capital citizens are gonna be like, "Oh, yeah, I'll pay
This is
whatever." Like,
The
I don't want
economy's not
this.
that
Yeah.
bad. The economy is clearly not that bad because you're making a
Uh-huh.
a crap ton in the capital. So you are just exploiting everyone at this point. You're exploiting even the capital citizens, I guess, because that's
Uh-huh.
their money that you're taking back off them to do a sponsor. You have to, like, really want to sponsor someone and that really be invested in their survival
Mm.
to spend triple, quadruple the cost of the actual gift to give to them.
We know
Like,
we know, though, it's been going on for such a long time. It's been going on for 74 years in the first book. We know people were really desensitized, and I think, again, I think, not to rip off your notes, but it is something you mentioned, how even when Katniss talks about how the tributes are kind of treated like animals.
yeah, I think it was it the last one I mentioned, how, like, there's, like, a desensitization to, like, you're fenced in, you don't have a
Uh-huh.
life. Everyone is treated as if you are an animal. And I'm gonna get into, like, the more, like, animalistic nature later on because it's repeated a lot throughout that no one really sees anybody else as being human. They all have their own idea of what, like, human means. And so you can
Uh-huh.
just, like, forgive um a lot of this if you are in the capital by, well, they're not actually human. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't really matter. Um, it's like bear baiting or dog fighting, just in a higher extreme. I think, like, Katniss even says, like, even herself, she goes, "The awful thing is that if I forget they are people, it'll be no different at all." And she's talking about
That's so
hunting here.
sad.
Like,
Yeah.
this is, I think, was it Gale who says to her, like, "It's just like hunting. You can hunt. You
Yeah, she
can
goes
you
by
can survive."
their
And
people
she's
get
like, "You're damn, you're right." Like,
that, yeah.
that is horrible. Like, so we're just forgetting that there are people at this point, and then you're putting this on TV as well,
Uh-huh.
and you've got trackers in people, and you are following them around, and then you've got commentators like it's some sort of sport or it's horrible,
Uh-huh.
like, David Attenborough style wildlife documentary. And so, but like rather than the lion hunting the gazelle, instead you've got, here we see a rather common sight. The Korea pack is hunting the tiny District 12 lamb. No hope of escape. Innocent and terrified. Like,
Brutal.
that is literally what they are doing. They are commentating on a human's life as a pack of 6 Koreas hunt them down with spears and knives. Honestly, I'm part of me is just a little bit impressed they haven't given them guns, but that's probably because it would end too quickly.
Yeah, I feel like if they gave them guns, there would not be enough TV. And as someone who works in film and TV, you need content to make a good
Just make it
program.
last
And
longer,
I also
really.
think that's also why, they need training because they can't put 24 untrained, terrified kids who feel like
Well,
they can't
technically, like
fight.
18 of them are untrained. Like
Mm.
6 of them have been raised on violence. So
Uh-huh.
like you've kind of got to give the rest of them a fighting chance, otherwise those 6 are just going to slaughter everyone.
Hence, right? The training, combat survival, and that kind of thing before the games.
It's complete madness. And then I guess like one like even again with the content and stuff, like you're not just videoing these kids being murdered. You've got those trackers in their arms that you can find them at any
Uh-huh.
point. So you can watch them like trying to hunt for food and you can get them on camera just as they're about to like die of dehydration before someone sends in a sponsor gift. At
Mhm.
some point, someone's gotta pee. You get them on camera as well.
I'm just assuming they're not showing it, but it is a bit weird that some of these adults are watching everything going
Yeah.
on with these children.
Like, where do you draw the line? If you're happy to let them, like, murder someone brutally live on screen, are you gonna let them hide behind a bush to pee? Is that where we draw the line here in the Capitol? Is that a bit too far?
It's a
Watching a
bit too
tribute pee?
far. You know,
Like, is that
you'll
where we're
watch
at?
them. You'll watch them get gutted and killed and
Yeah.
slaughtered and have their head bashed in on
But if
live
they wanna find, like, a little pit to use as a
privacy.
toilet, that's
That's
then we'll
fine.
let them off. Do you know what I mean?
That's the
Like,
line.
we don't wanna see that. That's a bit
Um,
too far.
oh my God. I think kind of going back to, it is a reality TV show. Effie obviously calls it like a reality TV show in the posting here. And I think we see with the prep team how they kind of get prep for going into the arena, that the prep team focuses on aesthetics rather than the emotional or moral weight of the game. They don't really mention it at all. They kind of just say then passing on the clothes, the game. They even say the game makers wanted to like give her a perm, like alter like her hair, the prep team, but I think Senna told them not to.
He did it a lot.
Yeah,
But
because he liked her hair, but she's 16 for God's
yeah,
sakes.
she's 16, and then she's stark naked. She's
Uh,
16 and completely naked in front of a group of random people who
it's
she has
weird.
never met before in her life. And going back to the animal thing, like the reason that she's not like uncomfortable with this is because she actually remarks that the prep team are so like because the capital culture is to alter your appearance, right? The capital culture is that you cannot be natural. Bearing in mind that they have completely stripped her of all body hair,
Weird.
which
It's
she
weird.
might well need for survival because it is there evolutionary for a reason. That is for warmth.
Uh-huh.
So you've already like put her at a disadvantage to make her look pretty so that she can get sponsors. But that's the culture, right? It's like she remarks that the prep team are like brightly coloured birds pecking around her feet because like one's got green tinted skin and everyone's wearing either brightly coloured wigs or they've dyed their hair. Doesn't someone have like cat like eyes in the
Yeah.
capital? And they're all like a little bit creepy, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like this is the culture of like cosmetic surgery but on like steroids.
Uh-huh.
And then like and after he's like stripped her of all her body hair and like filed her nails down because having perfectly trimmed nails is really going to be the difference between survival and not. Um,
Apparently.
and then Flavius remarks that like he's stripped her of her savagery from the seam, and I'm like, okay, well then. But then even she says like she can't blame them because they think they think they're helping her. They're not
They think
they're not
so.
cruel.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
genuinely think that they are giving her an advantage by making her look pretty because the more she looks now, if she was savage in the districts before, the more she looks like a human, what they think of being human to me
Uh,
now, the more likely she's going to get gifts and sponsors and
yeah.
have a way to survive.
Every time I read this bit of the book, I just go back to how weird it is that they're making all these young boys and girls hairless and making them look
It's
younger. Yeah, like younger than they are. I just makes me feel very, very uncomfortable.
yeah, I think the thing that creeps me out is the fact that, like, fair enough, like, if you think that you need to make these kids care about their appearance, show them how to shave their own legs. Like,
Yeah, why can't
don't
they do it?
rip them and do it for them. But then, like, they're dehumanized in the
Uh,
first place. So to them, it's more like shaving a cat for surgery or something. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a necessity and they're going to do it.
yeah, that's so
but
sad. That's so sad, but it really does show how desensitized they are to it, and they kind of just view all kids, maybe less so the careers, but still the careers from and the kids from the districts as not really human. I
not
mean,
really
we
human.
this
Yeah.
this is a whole discussion for when we get into like the other books like Songbirds
Yeah.
and
And how
and
they were
such.
put in a zoo.
And yeah, that'll be a
God,
whole
that was a whole
other
thing.
yeah, that'll be a whole other discussion. But even here now, we're seeing how, you know, because they're the district, they're inhuman
They're
almost.
inhuman. But to make them human gives the kids an advantage. But then at the same time, like, you've also got to bear in mind that if the kids get sponsors, the capital profits from the kids getting sponsors because the capital we've just proven is making money off of the sponsorships. So any way you look here, the capital wins. Even if you are the one lucky survivor in the
Oh
games,
yeah,
and
we
we'll
know
get
they
into
still
like
profit.
Finnick at some point with this as well, because
We're
he's a winner,
moving.
right?
Yeah,
He's
is
a
he though?
winner, right? But he's not a winner because he's if you win, you're a mentor. So you're still once you get reaped, you are in the games and you are locked in the games.
For
Unless
life.
you die, you cannot
Mhm.
get out of the system then. That is your only way out,
Oh, it's so
which and
brutal
then
and
that means as well that then they're profiting off the mentorships
yeah,
for life.
yeah,
So if you win, and you get your little house in the victor's village and you get like to live peacefully. I say with air quotes because
mm,
it's not peaceful in the slightest. Um, you still have to be like wheeled out, so you get your like victor's tour, right? And then a year later, you've got to go and be a mentor for somebody else. And if you're their mentor, you go on their victor's tour. And so if you get a winner, which is what you want, really, you don't want anyone else from your district to die,
exactly.
you're you're then in it every time making the capital money. And yeah, at this point you kind of get a piece of the pie, but it's a piece of the pie that you should have had all along, and that is to live in peace and
This
safety. It's the bare
this
minimum, really.
This will be something that we will get into in depth on our Hamage
Oh
episode
God,
and also
yes.
our Victor's episode very much at the end of this season. I have a lot to say about how there is never really a winner
No,
in this. There really isn't. But we will
unless you're the
save
capital,
we will save
then you're
that
a winner.
for later. So something as we get like further through this post, I remember something that Katniss kind of remarks when she does get to the capital. She says, like, what, when talking about the capital citizens, what do they do all day, these people in the capital, besides decorating their bodies and waiting around for a new shipment of tributes to roll in and die for their entertainment? And I felt that was quite deep and harsh, and but also a very valid question.
It's a very valid question,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the majority of them are in some way involved in the games. Like, so obviously, we know like from Mockingjay, when skipping ahead a bit, like they have like
Mm-hmm.
a main street and they have shopping districts and they have um like the ability to go, they have like a fashion industry and stuff like that as
Mm-hmm.
well. But I think the majority of the income is like cycled in from exploiting others. I
Yeah.
assume they'd have some sort of trade because the gross domestic product is slave labor effectively. So I assume they have some sort of like shipping cost. We don't really know much about the rest of the country, but like it would dictate that they cannot exist from within themselves.
Mm-hmm. I
And
mean,
then
the districts do all the manufacture. Like you said, it's like
all of
slave
it,
labor.
yeah.
The capital like lives this. quote unquote dream, even though we know that's not the case for all of them. And yeah, it does ask a question. Is pretty much like nearly every job here related to the games or upholding that lifestyle of the Hunger Games. That happens
Yeah,
every year.
and it is as well the, I guess the parties that go on around it and the laughter and the celebration, and it feels like we only really see it during like, the time of the Hunger Games in the capital, but it does seem
Mhm,
like the majority of it is celebratory and extravagant, and
mhm,
they are clearly making a crap ton of money off of this, and then that
mhm.
goes back into the capital. Like, I would assume there's someone in the capital who's, like, heavily taxed, right?
I don't
Or
know.
like,
This
are
chat.
we assuming the Hunger Games is like purely like a product within Panem, or are we assuming that this is like an internationally watched TV show as well?
I
Like,
mean,
do we think
I'd
this is
never thought about it.
broadcast everywhere else? Are they making money
Yeah,
off it that way?
that's a
Because
good question. I'd never thought about that.
there must be some sort of sanctioning at this point, because think of like, we know that Pan Am replaces America, right?
North America, yeah.
But then what replaces the rest of the countries? Is every other country okay with what is
Well,
effectively like
is there do
concentration camps within these districts that's
this
been going on for
big
70 odd years?
this big kind of apocalyptic events that happened, we know that, sea levels rose and it cut off bits of land, and then the war and all this sort of stuff that kind of made Panem. Like, are we, I guess, what is your opinion? Do you think there are other countries still functioning in the
I think
world?
I think if Pan Am's functioning, there's a good chance that some other countries are as well, like continent. If sea levels rise,
Mm.
Europe itself is a huge continent with landlocked countries. Unless the sea levels rose really pretty damn dramatically, those countries would still exist. A lot of Europe, like the UK, might be wiped off because we are quite a small island in comparison to
Yeah, we are.
definitely in comparison to America.
Uh-huh.
But Australia is massive. Australia is quite big. Some of that should have survived. You might have just all outbacks. I think it's coastal there, but like some other places must have survived. For if I'm gonna liken this to like, do we think we're the only intelligent life in the universe? Do we think we are the only country,
Yeah.
only planet in which all these forces just magically coincided out of the millions of planets that there are? This is the only one where everything was spot on. If you believe that, then you can probably believe that Panem might exist isolated,
I
right?
think
But
I think because of what happened, I think it is likely that there are other societies, it's like still present on Earth. But I do imagine it's probably a situation where all this disaster, all this war has affected communications, probably between countries. I'm not fully convinced that if there was another society that they really know what's going on
then they also
in
have
America.
hovercraft that can appear out anywhere. So
They
America
North
themselves,
America
North
do,
America,
yeah. North
but so
America do.
if Pan Am themselves, part of me also thinks that Snow as president is greedy
Mm.
enough, because obviously this is 100% not just about reminding everyone what happened, right? And like, this is why we don't war. He's also profiting from this. So you're not telling me that he's not also sent his hovercraft out to be like, okay, right, well, where else can we exploit and profit from? Obviously, Katniss is like 16. She has no idea. We're seeing this from her perspective. But I think he is that conniving, I think is the best word to describe it.
Or is he would he be more focused on just trying to keep what he has within his hands and stable and under his control, that he wouldn't want to bring kind of anything else
Like,
outside?
clue anyone else in to
It's a very
threaten
good
him.
working, to use a word, ecosystem, and he might not want to open that up to anybody else. He's got control on this if he decides to bring in any other part of land, because he said it himself, it's a very fragile system.
Yeah, I guess like if you can recognize itself as a fragile system, because there has to be some flow of income, right?
Hmm.
Because yeah, everyone's working like as slave labor and they're not getting very, very much for it, and all this like domestic product is coming in, the capital is surviving off that exploitation. But money does change hands, and you do spend physical money. It's not a trade system. You do spend physical money for things. So
Mm.
someone somewhere, like for economics to work, the money has to flow and go backwards and forwards. But it doesn't seem to circle anywhere in the capital. It seems like the only prosperous place, and it just goes backwards and forwards from you to me. It doesn't seem very sustainable in the long run.
I mean, it doesn't sustain, does it,
I mean,
in
you're
the
not
long
wrong, but
run? So I think bringing this back to the characters that we have and what we know from Katniss' perspective, I think looking at how the districts are used as you said, like slave labor. I think something you said about the capital doesn't care whether you live or die as long as you live and die to serve them.
I think, and one of the things, as I mentioned in the post, is like, this is the way it is, right? This is just how it has been for the last 74 years. But does that mean that it doesn't deserve to be changed?
Mm-hmm.
Like, does that mean it's because this is the long-term tradition now that's been going on for 74 years, that this is now how it is and no one has any agency at all? Although the council would like you to think that you don't have any agency at all, but do you genuinely not have any agency? And just because it's unjust, but that's the way it works, does that not mean that it's more worthwhile to try and change it? Because let's like lay these facts out, right? So you've got all the districts exploited doing all the manufacture. They are encircled to pretty much slave labor. They barely have enough to live. People are dying all over the place. Yet, capital does not care whether you live or you die, as long as it makes them money. You're dressing up in your Sunday best to be on camera in the hope that you can
Yeah.
look good to make money, but your life circumstances have mean that you are emaciated, that
Mm-hmm.
you are covered in coal dust, that you barely have enough to live off, but you're still going to wear your Sunday best as if you're going to church.
I mean,
Like
yeah, the
this.
in even at the reaping, when the capital also makes it this kind of, it is a holiday, right? The reaping
It's a
is
holiday. You
seen
get a
as a
day
national
off.
holiday. You get a day off,
Yes.
but you have to
You
go
get
and potentially get reaped and go
you
and
get a
fight
day
to your
off to
death.
go to your death. Yeah.
And they say it's because, oh, it's for peace. It's all about peace, and you peacekeepers and all this thing, saying like, oh, it's peace, but yeah, but it's peace for the capital, and only
Yeah.
not even everyone in the capital. It's for the people in the capital who you go along with the system. And I think the people in the capital, especially Snow, especially the higher ups, game makers, they definitely have a thinking of that either they can have peace or the districts can have peace, and they can't have both.
You
And
get one or the
yeah,
other.
it's like, oh, peace is like a pie, and if someone else has a slice, then there's less for you, which is not the situation. That's not how it works. But I think they've been given that fear now, like, oh, if the districts have some peace, they have some control, we'll have even less, and God forbid.
And I think as well, one of the things that sort of gets me is like you see her like go through the story of like how Panama rose to be
Uh-huh.
this country and then like war tore it apart, and every single district in the capital, it works in peace and prosperity. And then there was the dark days because there was this uprising of the districts. Well, if it was so peaceful and so prosperous back then, why was there an uprising?
Yeah.
Just genuine question. Like if everyone, like the capital would lead you to believe that before the uprising, everything was peaceful and everything went well in the world. And the
Uh-huh.
reason that you
Uh-huh.
are suffering now is because of your wanting to uprise. Because you wanted it, it feels like like the capital is trying to say that the rest of Panem wanted that bigger piece of pie. Like the capital and the districts were equally shared. Everything was on balance. Everyone lived in harmony. And then you wanted more. You wanted
Yeah.
more than your fair share.
Taking away from us, like, how dare you?
And so now this is how the world is because you got greedy. And like, do we genuinely believe that? Because obviously we don't. Katniss in the districts, so if anyone who has a brain cell can
Yeah.
question this, um, because the history books are written by those who win.
Uh,
Right, you get to put your opinion across because you've kind of quieted down the other side. This is punishment for the revolution, the original like uprising, right? But do we believe that this is punishment, or do we believe this has just gone back to the original status quo? This is what they were
mm,
dealing with before the original uprising, and this is just now
yeah.
as it is. But the Capitol's the one who's like put this out there. And like I said, anyone with a brain cell can question this. So it's not just
Uh-huh.
the Capitol that are at risk here of being persecuted, because the existence of AVOXs kind of like
Yeah, well,
proves
yeah,
that.
it's not just the districts like I was saying before. Yeah, the capital's meant to have all these good things and not be kind of used as slave labor. But as we go along, and even the first book, we know even people in the capital, if they don't go along with the story, um, can literally have their tongues cut out. It's horrid.
Yeah. So like the first one we meet is the red-haired girl who's
hmm
serving on Katniss and Peter in the I'm calling it the tower,
Their
like
their
the
quarters,
their
essentially.
quarters,
Yeah.
effectively.
Uh-huh.
Now I'm gonna get a little bit ahead of myself here because part of me thinks that they know what they're doing here. So like we learn that Katniss has met this girl before, like, she didn't save her, and that they ran all the way from the capital and they were going towards District 13 when they got caught. And there
Uh-huh.
was two of them, and the one guy just gets speared straight through the body, dead.
So traumatizing. Oh my
And then
God.
the girl gets captured and has her tongue cut out for her troubles,
Yeah.
presumably so that she can't actually speak about the reason she ran away in the first place. Presuming the girl has a brain cell and realized how bad things were, or and she spoke out. We
Yeah.
do see this in Ballad as well, which we'll get into at that point. But then this is the girl who got captured outside District 12, who Katniss witnessed. Now, Katniss and Gale seem to think that they weren't seen, right? But then when you get into Catching Fire, remind me what the head peacekeeper's name was. Is it like Darius or something?
It's something like that. I don't know. Just man
Because
name.
isn't he? Because peacekeepers are either traditionally from one of the districts, or you can
Uh-huh.
choose to sign up to be a peacekeeper from the capital. Isn't he from District 12? And he is an AVOX serving them in their quarters. So you're
Uh-huh.
not telling me that that strikes twice. You're not telling me that two AVOXers who were captured around District 12 dentally. Like Darius is a personal attack, but you're not telling me the first AVOX isn't also a reminder to Katniss. Yeah, coincidence she was quite outside 12 and she's serving 12. It's also a reminder that, well, even in the capital where they're supposed to have it good, we'll punish them. So don't think that we won't punish you.
There's really no, there
There's
is
no safe
nowhere
space.
that's safe. Yeah, like there's no safe place, even when you're meant to be in what's meant to be the height of luxury and you're meant to have all the choices and you're meant to have all the rights. And, people pride themselves in being from the capital and it's meant to be this lovely thing. It's just all one giant facade.
Yeah, there's literally nowhere that's safe. Even if you like because the Amos was trying to run to 13. At this point, like they have
Uh,
no idea that 13 even exists. They believe that it was completely wiped off the map. And that's probably why the Avox was had a tongue cut out, because she knew District 13 was a thing. Or she
mhm,
hoped it was and she was running
mhm.
towards it, and that could spark more people wanting to, I guess, like migrate, to be an
Leave the
expat from the
capital.
capital.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but even then, like everywhere that is not 13 is danger. The capital itself, not
I
safe. When
mean,
you're a mentor, not
13
safe. I mean,
is we'll get into that later when we
we'll
have
get
a
into that
have a
later.
District 13 episode, but I don't think that's very safe either. Yeah.
It definitely has its issues. No one's gonna
Uh-huh.
murder you, but well,
Well, mm,
well,
maybe. Depends what you do.
maybe they will.
Okay, so moving on. Why does Katniss fighting back work so well? And why do people in the capital originally, anyway, love the girl on fire? Um, that was one of my main big questions. It was like, why
Yeah,
why are the capital so enticed by her? I think it's because she is, at least originally, seen as this harmless spectacle. Like, she's amazing, she's pretty, she's on fire, but she's from the districts. She can't do
yeah.
anything really to hurt us, and she's a kid. Like, she has no power. So I think it really puts on a good show. But yeah, she's not actually, at least at this stage in book one, a threat.
Yeah, because Effie mentions in the post like that this is working well for Peter
Uh,
and for Katniss. Like they seem to have a bit more fighting spirit than usual, and that seems to be garnering them like quite a lot of like good press for that reason.
Uh-huh.
But she's not. You're right. At this point, like she's not she's a spectacle. She's not any sort of threat.
Yeah.
But then I guess that is just outwardly because Katniss actually remarks like earlier, I think it's earlier in the books when she's like in the
Uh-huh.
forest with Gale and she's talking about like running away and then Gale having a lot of opinions on the capital and then she'll let him vent in the forest because
Yeah.
the other side of that would be that he'd be talking about it in the square with the peacekeepers around. And
Mm.
she says that she used to say all sorts of stuff as a kid. She
Yeah,
used
no.
to have all sorts of opinions on
Mhm.
Panem and the capital and the way that things were, and it used to terrify her mother because obviously that's you're worried about the repercussions. And I guess if a kid at like 6 years old or whatever is coming out with this stuff, who
Mhm.
do you blame? You blame the parents for instilling that into her?
Exactly. Yeah.
And she realized that it was pointless to be like saying that stuff in the first place and to putting effort there because it would only cause more trouble. And her opinions and her thoughts really aren't harmless. Like she does have some quite strong
Dangerous
opinions,
thoughts. Yeah.
but they are harmful to herself and not
'Cause
to anybody else at this
I
point.
know I know that Katniss does remark the reason she stopped saying such things because she realized they could get her family in trouble. So she
Hmm.
just kind of went into, just smiling and nodding at people in the hallway and then not really making conversation. But I don't fully think the spirit that was behind those comments really went away. And I think we do
No,
see that spirit coming back when,
you do
she
100%.
shoots the apple and the pig during her showcase to the game makers because she's pissed off because they're all ignoring her and are more bothered about this pig than this girl who probably is going to die, but it's just her last moment to show her skills.
Hmm.
And I think Effie's reaction is interesting because she's
It's
obviously
interesting.
she's originally mad when she finds this out because obviously this makes her look bad, this makes District 12 look bad, and it affects her career, essentially, right, her career progression.
Hmm.
And not because she's worried how it will necessarily affect Katniss directly in the games, but because if you were actually 100% worried about your tribute's safety and wanting them to live and wanting them to win and go home, you'd want them to have that thirst for blood. You would want them to have that
Yeah,
fighting spirit.
100%.
It would be good for survival, but it kind of shows that this for Effie is all about image.
So I reread these chapters when we were prepping these episodes because I rewatched the films as well to like get a bit more idea of what was going on across both of them. And she gets madder in the movies by
Uh,
far. And I think there's a little bit of it hinted at in the books, but she doesn't do anything quite as dramatic as going completely like mental like she does in the movies. But then she does
uh-huh.
get happier when they find out the score and that it did actually pay off for Katniss. She gets like an
Uh-huh.
11, right? And even the careers only get 10s. So it does end up making her look good in the end. But I'm
Yeah.
going to circle back around to this because I have a big finish I am working up to with
Okay.
this episode.
Okay. You're
Because I have a
teasing
lot of
us with it.
I'm teasing you with this, but I have a lot of thoughts on Effie, and I think
Uh-huh.
I'm going to get into this a little bit more. But obviously, we're looking at this book from Katniss's perspective,
Uh,
and we also mentioned in the previous episode as well. There's a lot that Katniss overlooks because she's a
yeah.
16-year-old girl,
Unreliable.
and all she's out for is her own survival. But if
Uh-huh.
you sit through the books and you start like really picking apart like things that happen, factually like things that people say word for word, that she reports rather than her opinions around them and how she frames them in her own mind, you start seeing a lot more layers than the girl actually recognizes straight off the bat.
I think going back to Effie, we know basically throughout the whole thing leading up to the games that she doesn't actually think they can win.
No,
Like
even
she
like she's got the
says,
fighting spirit. She's not
yeah.
like actually
She
going to be worth the while.
like she says, oh, she might even be promoted to a better district next time because of like how they've behaved. There's no thinking that they'll win, and it's such a classic tone deaf Effie thing to
Yeah,
say.
I think she actually called Epitome death at one point. I think that's
She
actually a
she
like a
she
comment that she makes.
she is, but I think it really does show that they treat death so casually and view the tributes through this lens of like spectacle. Like they are humans, but they're not really seen as real. Because he said like, oh, the graders find the dead pig and food more important than the kid who they're sending off to death. Like combine that with half the tone deaf stuff that Effie says, and you're like, oh well, they're not really taking this like really seriously. And it does. We do see obviously later on, and not getting into the future episodes that we have, and I know we're going to have a whole career Invictus episode, which I have a lot to say about. But the Capitol sees these tributes as celebrities and commodities, and because I think even Katniss remarks in the first book that they treat the tributes like reality TV celebrities. They want to know everything about you just to see you die. Like how
Well, I
horrific
guess
is that?
they can probably make more money off you if you give them all the info. If you give them basically what is yourself at
Uh,
this point, you are giving over everything. What are you betting that you mentioned that all your favorite food that you've eaten in the capital is the lamb stew, like she talks about? What are you
yeah.
betting that someone that ended up coming out and marketing Katniss's favorite
Oh,
lamb stew?
100%.
Come get it here.
100%. And even in this interview they do before going into the games, Katniss has to end up acting grateful in her
Yeah,
interview to the Capitol the night before she's meant to go into the arena, into the Hunger Games, to potentially die. Like she has to be grateful for wearing the pretty dress and like twirling around. She has to be grateful for eating the food that God forbid she never has in District 12. And even Peter himself said, oh, he's grateful for smelling like roses for the shower
and,
and everything.
and gets Caesar to sniff him.
Yeah,
And
like
that's his charm, is to be like, look at what you've made me into.
I know.
Look at what you've given me in my last 3 weeks of life. Thank you
Mhm.
so much for that.
It's like you always have to look grateful for the capital, or the capital will kill you. In this sense,
Yeah,
it will kill you quicker.
yeah. The smallest difference of opinion is a death sentence. It is like high
Uh-huh.
treason. Like,
Uh-huh.
no matter what your slight difference of opinion is, that is ultimately like if you give any sort of indication that you are not 100% on board.
And I think when Effie is training her for this interview, there is such an importance put on it because she's making her walk in high heels and smile. But I know when I was listening to that and when I was reading that, it kind of felt like she was trying to dress up an already, which is awful, but like dead pig. It
Yeah.
felt like she was like, well, she's off to the slaughter, but let's put some high heels on her and make her look nice and make her look pretty. And I think out of her whole team, Cinna is really the only one who truly seems to see Katniss for who she actually is, because obviously he makes the dress better for her, makes the dress more like her. He lowers the heels so they're lower down because she's noticed
So
that
she can
she's
actually
struggling with
walk.
them.
Well,
Yeah.
she's got no purpose for heels in District 12, has she? Come on. Like,
Exactly, exactly. Oh, every time I talk about Sinner, I just get sad. Bless his heart. But
Sinner to me is like the perfect example. Like we've been talking throughout this episode, and the post itself is like, how do you do any sort of rebellion within this system, no matter whether
it's
you are
so
district or
yeah.
capital? Where does this start? And
Mhm.
Sinner's the perfect example to me of quiet capital rebellion,
Yeah, I
like
get what you mean.
plausible deniability rebellion. And
Mhm.
I'm going to get more into this in a couple of episodes when we talk about I think this is book 2 when we get into Haymitch's playing everyone like
Oh, yeah.
chess
Sneaky.
pieces,
Yeah.
for a while, because I think it starts a lot earlier than Katniss realizes.
Oh,
And a
100%.
lot more
Yeah.
people are in on it, and I think it's starting the second that they are in the games because they have this fighting spirit. Because even Haymitch remarks that, um one of those small signs of rebellion is Cinna suggests that Peter
Mhm.
and
This whole
Katniss hold hands in the
Yeah.
chariot,
Yeah.
and every other tribute couple is cold and distant, and they don't
Not
really
acknowledging
recognize
each
each
other.
other.
Yeah.
And then Haymitch plays on this more as getting them, and that itself, these guys being friends, these guys being friendly, knowing that one of
Mhm.
them's gonna have to kill the other, that in itself is a rebellion. Cinna asks for 12.
Yeah.
He's not like Effie, who is given the shit district, the one that no
Mhm.
one can dress up.
Straw
He
sure.
asks for 12. He pulls the Mockingjay pin off Katniss's outfit. She brings that with
Mhm.
her, and he's the one who turns that into her like district memento because she forgets where it went. and he's pulled it off her costume. But he
Uh-huh.
also doesn't buy into the aesthetic standards of the
Yeah.
capital.
Yeah.
He has no alterations apart from gold eyeliner. He looks
Uh-huh.
human, and I think that's why Katniss sees him as being someone that she can be friends with. She likes
Yeah.
the rest of her team, don't get me wrong,
In a
but
sense.
they're oddly coloured birds, and she kind of pities them because
Yeah.
of their naivety and how childlike and innocent they are, whereas Cinna is someone who is her equal. Cinna who is
Mm.
someone who is working with her. And he's working in small ways
Uh-huh.
within the problem to start the solution, as opposed to coming out of it externally. But he also has, up until we get to very blatant Mockingjay symbolism
Mm.
in Catching Fire, he is flying under the radar, plausibly deniable. Like, he's not going out there with it. And he's a
Uh,
perfect example of something that could be done to give anyone hope and just to
yeah.
let anyone know that he's not part of the problem. Because
Yeah.
that's the issue, right? All these tributes are coming in and they are surrounded by people who are all part of the problem.
Yeah.
Every single person is out to get them,
I
and
think
Sinner's not.
I think as we go further through the post and Effie talks about, it's this way for a reason, it stops the revolutions, and 23 lives is a small sacrifice in comparison to the tens of thousands of people who would die otherwise. I think it shows how Cinna is not fully brainwashed
He's
by
not
that
fully
idea. He's a good
brainwashed.
example of that. And it does make me wonder, how many capital citizens do you think actually truly believe that? Because it's a very thin excuse for a system that places profit over people, but I am also aware of how powerful fear can be.
Oh, yeah, I think one of my big things here is that you get further in and Snow kind of really credits Katniss for
Mm.
being the problem, right?
Uh-huh.
Snow credits her as this is the reason why he has a rebellion on his hands, because this
Sure.
16-year-old girl who
Uh,
can't think very
yeah.
far ahead apart from
Uh-huh.
let's just survive the day, please God, thank you.
Yeah, some might as
Um
well starve.
she's the girl on fire. She's what
Mm.
sparks the revolution. Well, we know that she's actually being played as a pawn by everybody
Yeah.
else, but even if she's the star, even if she's a spark, if you ever do any sort of like health and safety training for any business ever, or even like science
Where's this
classrooms in
going?
school,
Uh-huh.
like
Uh-huh.
you have a fire triangle, right?
Nice bit of
You
science.
need you need three things to start a fire.
Uh-huh.
You need a spark, you need like oxygen, and you need fuel, right? So Katniss on her own is the spark of the revolution, this girl on fire. If there was nothing to spark,
Mm.
nothing would catch alight. If the other elements weren't in place, see, I have a point to the science lesson.
If I say I
Um,
didn't, I bet you didn't think you were getting a science lesson on this podcast, but here you go. There's your.
but you can't ignite a revolution without there being something to fuel it
Yeah.
underneath. So
Mm-hmm.
we're not talking here. And then if we do skip ahead a little bit into Fire and
Shocking.
how the capital I didn't actually
It's
intend that
terrible.
pun, to be honest with you, but if you do, like, it is showing that the capital, even within the capital itself, is only a couple of steps away from pushing their fragile balance that
Uh-huh.
little bit too far. And then Sinner's just proven right there, like, there are people who don't believe it. Don't get me wrong, in every sort of toxic system, you will have people who wholeheartedly believe in it. Anyone who is up there with Snow as any of his advisors, um, will be either brainwashed or very, very able to fake being brainwashed.
Yeah, I think, let's be honest, it wouldn't be the first time a group of people have been radicalized by propaganda to think someone absolutely horrible like Snow and the system is actually good
But
for
yeah, look
them.
at any cult going. Look at any cult going, and
Wasn't
you will
even thinking
see.
cult. I was thinking some countries, but I just didn't want to go there.
I was like, let's not make it that political.
Uh-huh.
But that is the thing. Like, you can, if you give someone enough incentive and you know enough about psychology. But I also think in some ways that's because it is benefiting them, and the second you take away that benefit or you twist that benefit into a negative,
Mm.
that it does start to dissolve. And I guess within the capital, it doesn't really kick off yet. Within the capital, it's sort of simmering away underneath, like you're seeing Sinner and I guess the other mentors are now
Yeah,
capital.
who are in the mix. Yeah.
That's going to be simmering away underneath them and will have been for years. But the districts themselves, I guess Katniss is the spark there, sure, but if they've been treated a damn sight better than they currently are,
Mm.
there'd be nothing to catch a light. Like people here are itching for change.
Yeah, I
They
mean, you
just
hear that with
don't
Gale right
have
at the start. Yeah, they say they're
yeah,
talking in the mines about potential rebellion. Literally, that's the first chapter, first couple of
that's
chapters.
the first couple of chapters, yeah, and
Yeah.
he's in the woods ranting and raving about how they could run away and start a better
Mhm.
life away from all this chaos. So it's not that she's the one who's started all this, but I guess her having that fighting spirit is playing into that little bit within the capital citizens as well, who are going, "Oh, look
Mm.
at this girl. Look at how strongly she feels about something. Look at
Passion,
this."
the drive for
Yeah, the
change.
passion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even then, even if they're going, "Oh, it's not quite right, but I don't want to risk my comfort," it's a lot easier to get behind somebody else and sort of support them quietly to sort
Uh,
of take the fall, even if they're too scared to actually like make the start themselves.
yeah.
It's nice to see somebody else paving the way forward. I think
I
that's part of
think
why she's doing so well.
I think a lot of this I will also get quite heavy in when we start really talking about catching fire
Yeah.
and, the reaping process for the quarter quell and all of that. I don't want to get too deep into that now because I know that's meant to be later, but I have opinions, Rachel. I have many, many opinions.
Well, I think one of the benefits of like a long series though is we're going to have a lot of crossover here. So
Yeah.
if there's anything that you hear that we're talking about that you're like, I want to hear more of that, go find the episode because we will dig into this. And
Uh-huh.
I'm about to really, really dig into Effie in a minute. If you are
In a
prepared for that,
minute.
Katie, are you
If you're
ready for
still
this?
here, yeah. If you're still here, listeners, we're about to get well, Rachel is about to get
I'm about to
deep.
really get into Effie now.
Okay, so getting further through this post, some things I need to bring up. So,
Okay.
do we think Effie is naive, or do we think she's really good at her PR job, and then like pretending she doesn't think too deeply about it all? When you think about it like that, who is the arsehole here? So I think we should like take a look at this. She can't move, like literally. Like she can't exactly rebel. She could do a quiet rebellion, like Cinna, but she doesn't do anything quiet, right? We've
Does
seen what
Effie know?
yeah, I know. Like we've seen what happens to people who do Avox, death. It's horrible, horrible stuff. The bloody girl from the capital who ran away got made into an Avox. It's not exactly like the capital's own are protected. So I know you have a lot to say.
I have a lot to say about
So
Effie.
do you
So
wanna do you wanna
I'll
take it away?
take it away. I hope you're ready
Okay.
for me to get up on my soapbox here because I am
Okay.
about to tear into this with teeth. So I think the easiest way to liken how I feel about Effie, personally, knowing that Katniss girl is oblivious, is if you've ever heard the probably widely recognized and accepted theory that Marilyn Monroe, the blonde bombshell, the classic
Okay.
dumb blonde, is not actually a dumb blonde.
Uh,
She's very, very good at selling sex, and
uh-huh.
she's very, very good at building a very successful career out of being her own PR and buying into what was successful at the time for her, right? That is Effie to me. So I think still waters run deep with this girl. She is a lot more clued up than you think. But
Okay.
okay, let's go into what Katniss sees first, right? So you hear that everyone knows she's aching to get bumped up to a better district so she can profit
Yeah.
off them. She
Mhm.
refers to Katniss volunteering as not wanting Prim to get all the glory.
Oh,
She
yikes,
says
Effie.
She says that previous tributes upset her digestion because they were eating with their
Uh-huh.
fingers, and Katniss remarks that the last two kids were from the scene and they had
Uh-huh.
never had a full day's worth of food in their lives. And then when Katniss then goes, you know what, fuck you, Effie, and then starts eating with her own fingers and then
Yeah.
wipes her fingers on the tablecloth,
Just
Effie
yeah.
purses her lips in disgust. Right,
Mm.
she's disgruntled about the state of her wig during the reaping.
Uh-huh.
Haymitch has a lot to learn about presentation and televised behaviour.
Uh,
She doesn't comment on the reaping itself, just on appearances. And she says she won't be surprised, like you mentioned earlier, if she gets promoted to a better district, a decent district
so
next year.
tone deaf, Effie.
She's commenting on Peter and Katniss like impacting her career and they're about to die. Right. This
Uh-huh.
is her being tone deaf. But I
Uh-huh.
think this is all a front.
You think? You really
I
think? You
think
don't
it's
think
all a
she's
front.
just
I don't think she's this tone deaf. No, I think
okay.
I think it's gonna like 'cause we're getting an Effie book, right? I
Hopefully, there's
think
rumors. Yeah.
I'm thinking that we're gonna really find out a lot more about because as we're looking at Katniss as perspective, and we know this girl is oblivious. We are
Yeah.
actively aware
Yeah.
that she's not thinking about herself, and she has just met this woman, and this woman reeks of capital. This is
Uh,
her only direct experience of the capital
yeah, it's true.
from every single reaping. She's there putting on a presentation. That presentation is not for the districts, that presentation is for the capital. And then even Katniss like recognizes that her prep team are doing sincerely trying to help her, but doesn't
Uh,
recognize that Effie's also trying to help her with her fixation on PR. I think that's
mhm.
how Effie survives. I think Effie's still
Okay.
alive because of what she puts forward. She's also distancing herself as well, right? Because she's got to spend a lot of time with these kids. And clearly, you see in Catching Fire, isn't it, how upset she gets about the
Yeah.
fact that Peter and Katniss come back. So she does
Yeah.
have a heart. Her
Mhm.
distance is her trying to protect herself because she knows her kids ain't going to survive.
Okay, survival strategy.
So it's a survival strategy
Okay.
on her behalf, and I think she's also doing it so that they have the best PR spin as well.
Mhm.
Like one of the comments that she says is like, Katniss and Peter have overcome the barbarism of their district,
God.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember
But
that.
that's
Yeah.
that's a comment that she's made on Capitol TV.
Yeah.
That's not a comment that she makes to Peter and Kat. She makes other comments to Peter and Katniss,
Yeah, this
but
is just as bad, but yeah.
I'll get there. I'll get there. I'm
Uh-huh.
building up to
Okay.
this.
Okay.
She says something about putting pressure on coals to make pearls, right? And Katniss is like, that ain't fucking right.
It doesn't know how it
That's not
works,
how
babe.
this one
That's not
works.
how it works.
That's no, you're in the wrong district dialogue. This isn't
Uh-huh.
working. But it's not the accuracy that matters, it's the spin. It
Mm.
does not matter whether what she says is the truth, it matters how it is perceived. Katniss doesn't see her as destructive either. So, like, when you get towards the end of her time with Effie, Katniss remarks, she's tiresome and clueless, but
Mm.
she's not destructive like Haymitch. And Katniss is fighting to survive every single day. We know she's unobservant. She doesn't recognize half of what her mom's gone through. And we're
Yeah.
going to get into everything she misses about Peter in the next episode.
Oh, I'm ready.
But but she's a 16-year-old girl who has very little life experience outside of her district. All
Uh-huh.
she's recognized so far is that she herself cannot express her thoughts because it would only cause more trouble.
For
Right?
a family. Yeah.
My biggest thing that I think Katniss skips over, and this is where we go back to how in the movies, Effie's reaction to Katniss shooting the apple in the dead pig's mouth is a
Uh-huh.
lot more extravagant than in the books. It's a lot more angry. Now,
Yeah.
in the books, what actually happens is so Katniss reveals at the dinner table what happens. Katniss has come running back from her private session and she's in floods of tears and she comes out for food and she realizes that like what they're gonna do. What can they do? They can't. And Haymitch just like comforted her with the fact that well they can't punish your family anyway.
I
They can't
mean,
because they'd
poor
have to
Haymitch.
reveal.
Yeah.
He says something like they'd have to reveal what happened in the private session for them punishing Katniss's family to have any impact socially. So it doesn't actually logically make sense for them to do that. They'd wait for like a bigger infraction for that.
Mhm.
And after this conversation's going on and Katniss has settled down, she makes a comment about how one of the game makers fell into the punch bowl. And everyone laughs.
Yeah.
Everyone laughs. Effie is suppressing a smile. Effie's the only one that actually laughing, but she's suppressing a smile. She wants to as well. She's
Mhm.
hiding her true feelings from that. And then after that, she says, and I've pulled the direct quote again here. She says, "Well, it serves them right. It's their job to pay attention to you. And just because you come from District 12 is no excuse to ignore you." Then her eyes dart around as if she's said something totally outrageous. "I'm sorry, but that's just what I think," she
Yeah, who you
says to
talking
no
to?
one in particular.
That, like, makes
I
me so uncomfy every time because 'cause I'm like, who's she talking
Who's
to?"
watching? And this,
Uh-huh.
don't forget though, this is the quarters for tributes, right? What's to say there isn't some televised moment here? What's to say Effie's not being watched the entire time? Why does she feel so bad about supporting her tributes, her
Yeah.
candidates in this
Yeah.
games in a private quarters? Why is she like, "Oh shit, I shouldn't have said that. Fuck. Okay." So that's just what I
Mm.
think, and it's such a small thing to complain about as well, and yet she's so
Uh.
terrified already.
Yeah, she's so scared, and I was like, they bugged the place? Like, is
Have
that
they bugged the
normal
place?
in the capital?
What has happened around Effie that makes her
Uh,
think that something dangerous is going to happen for her just criticizing the game makers?
yeah.
I don't think she's scared of losing her job. I think that's the least of the girl's worries here. I think this is about her own survival and trying to help from within, but I think she's going about it in a different way to Cinna. I think
Mm,
there's something underlying there that will come to light when we know more about Effie, because she is responding in a way that details her own trauma. And this is the thing, like, we've learnt more about Haymitch now, having had the books,
Haymitch,
and we
Haymitch,
judged
Haymitch,
Haymitch so
Haymitch,
hard.
don't. We
We
do, we really
judged
do. I
we
feel
judged
so
him so
bad
hard.
now. I feel so
And then
terrible.
now you realise exactly why he responds the way he responds to things. Cinna
Yeah,
Cinna makes a dress. Cinna makes a dress and fucking dies. Like,
yeah, yeah, it's so brutal.
so, like, what other things has happened around her? Do we not think? And then I think she goes even so far as to unite them as a team, skipping ahead a little bit further from where she's currently writing this post right now. I don't think Effie would ever have written this post because I think she kind of knows exactly what she's doing. I think it's just
Uh-huh.
very well hidden behind what Katniss at 16 can
Mhm.
perceive. And she goes as
Okay.
far as Katniss has her pin and she makes a locket for Peter, and there's a gold cuff that gets given. And I think in the books, I haven't like reread Fire Enough Ahead since we started planning this series. But I think she uses the mock J specifically as a symbol for the whole team. Like,
Yeah,
correct me if I'm
yeah, she
wrong.
does. Yeah.
And Katniss and everyone around her sort of go, "Nah, she can't know what she's doing. She doesn't
Yeah,
she doesn't
I
know that's
feel
being used as a symbol for rebellion. She has no idea, right?" I think
yeah.
she does.
Really? You think she does?
I think she does. I think she's clued up a little bit more than everyone sort of makes her out to be, because I think that's how she survives. I think that's how well she hides it. And I also think that's why it doesn't if you
Sorry.
go ahead.
I just want to
You're
apologize to
hungry.
anybody. I apologize to anybody who might have just heard the absolute state of the noises that just came from my stomach. I am
We
hungry.
are
Please ignore that.
we're nearly over. We can go for lunch soon.
Sorry,
But
Jesus.
correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't read
Mhm.
Mockingjay since about May this year. But doesn't Effie get captured in the capital, and doesn't she
She
survive?
does. She does, and she
Right?
survived. Yeah.
So does she not survive because of how fucking well she's played this game?
I think she survived. I
Because
I
she's
I
clueless?
I I get where you're coming from, and I really do think that that is an option. That could be the case. She could just be that good at what she's doing. I don't know. I think she is quite brainwashed. Do I think that she gets better as the series goes on? Yes. Do I
Or does
think
she
she's
get
yeah.
braver? Does she
Okay,
get
well,
braver?
you might think she gets braver. I might think she starts to actually start to think for herself. Starts to get her own brain. Starts to realize that these things aren't okay. I think a lot of what Effie does is not. I don't think she gave the pin knowing that was the symbol for the rebellion. I don't think that was her way of rebelling. But I 100% see where you're coming from. And honestly, I would be interested if people could let us know what kind of side they
What side
agree
do you
with.
fall on with this
Yeah.
debate?
What
Yeah.
way have you taken this? What way have you taken Effie's behavior? Because I do think she does put on a little bit of an act. Like I think it's a little bit of an act, but I don't think it goes just as deep
I
as you're
don't
saying.
I
But
don't necessarily think that she's like gonna be like leading the charge behind,
I don't know.
but
Yeah.
I think she is sort of actively aware of the situation that she's in. I think she's probably more like Katniss right now, where
Uh,
she knows the trouble that would happen if she said her thoughts, and so she just hides the thoughts behind. Katniss hides it behind her like unfriendly exterior,
uh,
and this is just who I am. I don't want to speak to people. I'm only bothered about surviving the day. I think Effie's learned how to work within the machine. I don't think she's going to be leading the charge by any stretch of the imagination. I just think she's very, very sympathetic to a rebellion, and she sees the dangers and she sees why a rebellion would happen. And she's not going to help out in the same way, but I think she'll quietly support the same way that Sin is at right now, where
uh.
it's like, I'm not going to lead the charge, but I'll quiet support here.
I guess at this stage in the discussion, we've got to answer that ultimate question of, am I the arsehole for going along with an unjust system because it gives me comfort, stability, and status? What are your thoughts, Rachel? After that in-depth discussion. Also,
After
my
that,
stomach. My God, be quiet. Sorry, guys.
stealing time for food. We're nearly there.
Uh-huh.
It's hard to say because I do feel like I'm seeing it from both sides. I don't feel I feel like I kind of feel like episode 1 where we ended on there was nothing else that could be done.
Yeah, that was it was
I
very
kind
from
of
one side.
I kind of feel like there's nothing else that could be done. I feel like Katniss is viewing it from her side at this point, the same way she's viewing her mother. She's viewing
Uh,
her as if something else should have been done and that should not have been purely on her. But obviously there was nothing else that her mum could have done in this situation. I think it's the same thing with Effie. I think it's the
uh,
same thing with anyone who works within the games who is not a head honcho within the games. Any sort of small cog you are, what if you refuse to do the job that you've been given? Because
yeah.
I assume people don't apply for this kind of thing. I assume it's a bit more nepo baby, kind of
No, I mean, I think in
tap
Effie's
you in,
case,
tap you
yeah,
out.
yeah,
Um, I think it's a case of, well, the more open you are and the more vocal you are, you just die. And therefore it's basically an every man for themselves situation, as
I
opposed to it
think
being
I
you
don't
should help.
I don't think she's an asshole for going along with the system. Obviously, in the post, she says comfort and stability, but I think we know deep down it's like not to die,
That's the PR
which,
spin, isn't it? The PR
yeah, that's
spin
the
is that,
PR
well,
spin.
I had status, I'm on TV, look at me, my big fancy job.
Because it's the natural reaction, right? To want to survive, to not to die, to not have your tongue cut
Got
out.
cut out, yeah.
Weird capital, but I do think she could have maybe done slightly more in the silent rebellion kind of thing with Cinna, but it's whether she even knew that was happening or that was an option. So it's not black and white, it's very murky, it's very morally grey, which is what this series is all about, these morally grey characters. I think there are some red flags there with you, poor Effie. But there are green ones too, and there's many, many, many grey ones
So
with our girl Effie.
ultimately, the answer to this question will arrive with an Effie book. Then
Yes,
we
I
will
want this book.
really know what's going on in Effie's mind, and
I
I will
want I
know
want
whether
this
I
book.
am vindicated, whether I
I
am right.
I want this book so badly, and I know there's been rumors about it, and I don't think it's actually been confirmed by Suzanne Collins, but I would love it to because I would
Love
love
it.
that to be one of the upcoming books. And if anybody listening has heard anything or has any thoughts or theories about
If you
potential
want to
Effie book,
find a link to a Suzanne Collins confirmation at any point, stick it down
that'd
below
be great.
because
That'd be great.
I need to know.
I need
I
to know.
do. I need to know if I'm
Okay.
right.
Okay, Rachel, as we're nearing the end of this episode, I have an important question to ask you.
Okay,
You ready?
hit me with it.
Would you rather I'm sorry, I had a horrible flashback to sleepovers in my teenage years. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, hold on. Would you rather navigate the deadly arena or survive a year in the capital's high society, but regardless, your sympathies lie with the districts. Okay, so
So
basically,
basically,
yeah,
do I want to die immediately or do I want to risk death every day for a year?
because
Um,
you might be a bit outspoken, Rachel.
I'm a bit outspoken. I am, but I do have a degree in drama. So do I think
You could be Effie. You could be
my
Effie.
acting abilities are up to surviving a year in the
Uh-huh.
capital?
Uh-huh.
Part
How
of me would
come?
feel really guilty. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if your sympathies are with the district, but you are still out and about enjoying the high life. I think, could I do
You
a
could
Sinner? Could I
you
team
could
up
do a
with
sinner.
Sinner?
Yeah,
I
because
could team up with Sinner
my thinking
and si
is I would maybe go into the capital high society because I don't want to die, and I would. I'd probably eat something I shouldn't and conk out. I won't even get murdered.
to just be like,
And
"Oh, those berries look nice."
exactly, yeah. And I would try my bestest to do a sinner. I guess if either way I might die, at least that way I might help contribute to its
Something. I guess
ending.
if you're in
Yeah.
the arena, you're kind of, like, trapped in the system and you're
Mm,
stuck there. Whereas if you're in the society, even though it's your own sort of hell because you're surrounded by people who think the exact opposite to you or are hiding the fact that they
mm,
agree, you run a different risk, but at least from within, you can tear down a part of it.
mm.
Whereas once you're in the arena, you
I'm kind of
can't.
stuck.
You're kind of
Yeah.
stuck there with pretty shit stakes, to be honest.
Unless you do a Katniss and manage to get out and then lead a rebellion and then become this person without
Then
realizing,
you
and
go
then
back in anyway,
then they send you back in anyway, and then yeah.
and then you
Yeah.
end up the streets of the capital become another arena. So you know.
Yeah.
Would you rather live in the capital or survive the arena 3 times? Capital. You're gonna put it
Yeah.
like that, capital.
Okay. Yeah.
So, quick
It,
peek ahead.
so yeah. Yeah. So what's happening
Yeah,
next week, Rachel?
quick peek
What's in
ahead
store next?
to the next episode, and then Kate can go and eat some food.
I'm so hungry.
So, hopefully this will be a lighter episode because we've been pretty damn deep into mental health and
Oh,
politics
yeah.
up to this
Sorry, guys.
point.
Sorry.
Uh, we didn't start this off easy for ourselves, did we?
No, we
But
didn't.
we are going to Baker Boy, who has written, "Am I the asshole for telling the whole country about my crush before I tell her?"
Yikes. Okay.
So we're gonna tear into Katniss a little bit more, I think.
Yeah.
She's
I'll
not
go
having a good time
Katniss.
from us lately, is she?
No,
She's
she's like
oblivious. She does
she's
this, she does that.
oblivious. Yeah, she really is. And she annoys me so much sometimes. So I'm gonna get into that. Our girl Katniss, our boy Peter. I love them so much. I know they annoy me sometimes, but I do. I like
Yeah, you're definitely a Team Peter kind of gal, aren't you?
does that mean you're a teen girl?
It does not. It
Okay,
does
thank
not. Don't worry.
God.
I never got into Team Peter versus Team Gale the way I
Okay.
did Team Edward versus Team Jacob.
That's the whole different discussion.
Like, I got deep into that one.
Mm,
In this one, I was like, why would anyone like Gale? Like, I don't get it.
mm.
Don't understand.
He annoys me. When we have the Gale episode, I'm gonna pop off. I hope you're ready for that.
I mean, there will be Team Gale girlies in the chat who are like, yeah, but he's hot.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I get.
I
Yeah,
mean,
from the bisexual
mm.
part of me can appreciate what the actor looks like. But girl, if you're just reading the book, there's no visuals, and you're going off personality only. What are you doing?
The asexual part of me is just like, is it?
Is it? Yeah, so you
Is
that
it?
just like that's completely taken out for you. It's
It's
personality
attractive.
only.
Are you sure? Do you not want the guy who bakes patisserie cakes?
It sounds so
The boy
good.
who can cook.
Yeah, can throw a bag of flour. Oh, don't even get me
Oh,
started.
he can throw a bag of flour that's the weight of Katniss. Like, he can
How is
throw
that not
her around.
attractive? How is that not
Exactly.
attractive? But he'll be like soft and delicate about it, and he'll like acknowledge your emotions. Okay, we got like that's next episode. That's next episode. Let's save it, Katie. Let's save it. Let's save it.
There you go. A
Okay.
sneak peek into next time. So,
God, I'm gonna totally expose my my brain. Are we ready for this? I'm scared.
who wants an insight into Katie's
Nobody.
deep?
Nobody does. Nobody does, Rachel.
Well, I
Nobody
think
does.
they're gonna get it anyway. Right. Join
Okay.
us next time for
Join
that.
us next time, guys. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for
Bye.
listening. Bye.
Thanks for listening to our podcast, and don't forget to let us know your thoughts on all of our potential assholes.
No matter what platform you're listening to us on, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, upvote and all that stuff.
If you like what we do and want to find out more, all of our platforms are listed in the description or show notes. We're a 2-person team, so any support or feedback is always greatly received.
Tune in next time to Once Upon a Red Flag. At some point, someone's got to pee. You getting that on camera as well?
I'm just assuming they're not showing it, but it is a bit weird that some of these adults are watching everything going on with these children.
Like, where do you draw the line? If you're happy to let them like murder someone brutally live on screen, are you going to let them hide behind the bush to pee?